and welcome back to the Book and Life podcast. Today we're going to have a brand new book guest on. Whether they're an author, an editor, a producer, you'll never quite know, so you're in for one hell of a ride. But today I just have to do the adverts and then I'll get us straight into that most important conversation. And as we do every week, I'm going to read The Shadow, which is part of the Time Guardian series, and this is book 4 from Marianne Curley. The battle is over, the war is won. The prophecy complete, but life can't just pick up where it left off for Ethan, struggling to cope with tragic loss. At odds with friends in the guard, he finds himself adrift, jumping in shadows and sensing someone who can't possibly be there. Blaming herself for the goddess Athena's death, Giselle swears revenge, to vilify the Immortals' plan for world domination. But Giselle hadn't planned on love, and that leaves her with an unbearable choice. Should she follow her heart, or the strings of a goddess short on praise but high on expectation, who continues to pull her from the grave? As the Guard and the Order battle through the past and into an impossible future, darkness lurks round every corner. The fight for the world's survival rests with just one. Is it friend or foe who stands in the shadow? And just a reminder that The Price of Freedom by Rosemary Rowan, is being donated to the Ukraine refugee crisis. And here's the blurb for her book. It's one of her Roman British crime series, which was written under her maiden name. All editions can be found online where all books are sold, even her agents donating her commission. Sorry, I don't have the blurb for that, but that's what she's doing. And now, without further ado, let's get you to the guests. And as promised, this week I have brought you guys the most exciting guest. I have been ecstatic since the book arrived to bring in Vanessa Fox O'Hare. O'Hone. Oh, I was close.
Don't worry.
I was close. I overthought it.
Sam Blake, it's much easier.
Yeah. Funnily enough, we were just talking pen names. So yeah. And I actually found I can't use McCarrington in America because no one can say it.
That's why it's always good to have a pen name that's nice and easy.
Yeah, I thought it was an easy one because it's Mick and Carrington, but no, apparently no, people can't say that. So I'm probably going to end up going to Fleming at some point because,
yeah, it worked for Ian, so I think you'll be fine.
Yep. So that's kind of where mine comes from. Do you want to share yours?
Yeah. So my full name is Vanessa Fox O'Loughlin, which, as you've encountered already, is a tricky one to say, and it's very difficult in the UK, particularly when people are introducing me, because they get to the K, well, the GH bit, and it sounds like a K, but they don't manage that. So basically we decided right at the start of my career that a pen name would be a good idea. Also, Vanessa Fox O'Loughlin is enormously long to fit onto a cover, obviously, as well, so it would all be a big squash. And it's really important when you're thinking about pen names to come up with something that people can remember and that's really easy if somebody catches a snatch bit on the radio or TV or whatever, that it's an easy one to remember and then to Google or whatever. So Sam Blake fills sort of all the criteria. There's also a theory that men don't read crime written by women, so there's an awful lot of crime writers that have androgynous first names, and that's where the Sam comes from. So yeah, it's a good name. And B on the shelf is a great place because I'm in Ireland. I'm between Binchy and Benjamin Black, so that's a good nice eye level in the library. So it's a good place to be.
Unless you're short like me.
Well.
And then you're just like for second shelf or something. So you've got 2 amazing books out. You've got Four Houses mystery novel.
The Mystery of Four, which
Mystery of Four, that's
just
right.
came out in January. We're recording this earlier than people are listening, aren't we? So so the Mystery of Four came out in January and went straight to number 1.
Which was amazing. Congratulations.
Promptly knocked off by Prince Harry. But that's fine.
It was a bit I just felt so bad for you because I saw that and I was like, oh dear.
It's got got lots of extra news out of it because the press and the papers have picked it up, and then the TV news sort of thing about Harry, and my book was in every single shot, so you can't complain really.
No,
So that was
those
great.
ones, yeah.
And then, the other book that is came out May 4th, is called Something Terrible Happened Last Night, and it's my YA debut. So that's
Oh, wow.
a whole new thing, whole new area.
So
for
what
me. Very
made you
exciting.
jump from crime to YA?
Yeah, well, it's still crime, so it's crime
Okay.
for 14, 16-year-olds, or 14 plus, I should say.
Yeah.
And so crime novel. It's about a girl, well, a school called Ravens Hill, and a private girls' school, and the kids in it, they're great actually. Frankie, Saoirse, and Jess are my three protagonists. But they go to Katie's birthday party. Katie's 17, and she's quite well off. She's having a very big birthday party. Her parents are away, and all hell breaks loose, and there's a big fight. It's all a bit of a disaster, and when they go back to help her clear up, they find that there's a dead body behind the sofa. So that's what that one's all about.
It does remind me a little bit of Pretty Little Liars for some reason. I don't know why, but that just sprung up in my head, and we were a fan of that show because we watched it, me and my partner. Except for he would every so often shout, "Why are you not taking a weapon with you?" Because they're teenagers. But yeah, no, it sounds amazing, and I love when you get YA crime because kids, rather than kids jumping into crime for adults, I think it's a good stepping stone.
Yeah.
And you don't really get a lot of that. I think Sarah Shepard was the first YA crime novelist I met, and I kind of got introduced to, and then I was like, is there anybody else doing this? So yeah, it's good to see some sort of, I call it UK talent,
Yeah.
that is trying to change it a little bit more.
Exactly, because there's some big Americans, but there's still Holly Jackson's a great, fantastic writer. I loved her Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and her new one, Five Survived, is great too. So, yes, there's good people out there. It's fun. I love writing crime. I love mysteries, and I love puzzles. So, it's new area, exciting.
So tell us about the one that's just come out in January.
So The Mystery of Four is one of my adult thrillers, so it's more of a psychological type thriller. This one's a bit different from the previous ones I've written because it's a bit more cosy, sort of Agatha Christie inspired. It's a country house mystery. It's about a lady called Tess Morgan who something awful happens to her in Dublin, and she leaves Dublin when she's finished her degree to go to Dubai and works there for a while. And when she gets to the stage where she's ready to come back, she sees a country house for sale. And the house is burned down, so it's going for a good price. So she invests all her money, her savings, everything, all the money she's earned in Dubai, in this country house, this pile, a Kilfenora house, which is up in the Wicklow Mountains. And she spends 2 years restoring it. So we meet her really as the house is ready to open to the public. She's opening it as a venue for the public, and doing house tours and all that type of thing. And she's just invested everything in it. So we meet her just a week before the grand opening weekend. She's organised this play of Dr. Faustus to be performed as part of the opening weekend, so she can invite the press and she can show off the banqueting hall and everything. And she's just literally getting ready to go from her house, the Butler's Lodge, across to the stable yard to go into the play, when she gets a call from a journalist to say that he believes a dead body has been buried on her land. So that's the first thing that goes wrong. And then from there, all sorts of things start to happen to the cast of Dr. Faustus, and we start to really fear for Tess. So that's really essentially the plot. There's lots of twists and turns, and lots
So
of
what
larger-than-life
inspired
characters.
it? Like, what would you say was your main inspiration for this?
A variety of things this time. So Amanda Lees is a friend of mine, and she's written an amazing book called The Dictionary of Crime,
Yeah.
which basically is a dictionary of ways to kill people, which I really enjoyed reading. And I found a poison in there right at the start called aconite that I found very interesting. It's a beautiful blue flower that grows in an awful lot of gardens, and it's an ornamental flower, and it's grown, won Royal Horticultural Awards, and I just thought it was very interesting. It's very, very toxic, and it has a very short half-life, so it's not always detectable. So that was very interesting. That really started me off, and I was thinking about that. I just watched Agatha Christie's, actually the movie of Agatha Christie's book Murder is Easy, and the filmmakers have decided to put Miss Marple into that, even though she's not in the book. And so I was very interested in that whole idea of the fact that you could have a series of completely different murders, and yet they could be connected. So that's been a little bit of a clue for you there for anybody who wants to dip in. So that was another influence. And then the other thing that happened was I was in London and got back to my hotel and caught the end of a documentary that Trevor McDonald was doing about cold cases and investigations. And he basically he was doing an investigation into Fred West victims, because apparently there are some victims out there they haven't found. And he went to this farm, or discovered that he felt there were remains. It was him and a whole load of forensic psychologists, all sorts of different other people.
I think I've seen this, yeah.
It was really good. Yeah, there were these remains on a farm, and he went to the owners and said, can we come and dig up your farm, basically, and have a look? And they said no. And obviously Trevor McDonald wasn't working with the police at this stage. It's an independent investigation, so he couldn't get a warrant or whatever. And I just thought it was a really interesting moral dilemma. This is a book about, there's a lot of moral dilemmas in The Mystery of Four. And I just thought that's very interesting, because, you really want for the victim's family and for everybody involved in that to have closure if there are remains there, and yet do you want to become the middle of this sort of media circus that's inevitable, particularly with a notorious killer like that. So I thought it was very interesting. So all of those things came together, and I loved the idea. I was sort of ready to investigate Golden Age mysteries, and I loved the idea of a country house, and that sort of sense of a locked room. So it's very much set in the house in the village, and we have quite a big cast of characters, but obviously there's no sort of blow-in killers, if you like. So we know somebody's up to nefarious deeds within the cast that we have. So I would just fancy that challenge, really. I really enjoyed writing it. The characters are larger than life. There's some fun ones in it.
Those are the funnest ones to write, when you get a character that you just get swept along with, because I know from doing a lot of my stuff where you get to that point of, I can't stand this book anymore, because we all get frustrated. It's a natural sort of process for all of us. So when you have that one character that can just keep you going, especially when you're getting to that slug of, I'm halfway there, I can do this, but you're getting tired. So I have one character, she just washes me away every single time I even think about writing anything to do with her, and that's with Marie Story. She's terrible because she's such a hothead and firecracker, and one minute I could be just writing a very calm dinner, and the next thing I know she's throwing a plate at somebody's head, and I'm like, where did that come from? But I just go with it, it's just that her personality comes through, and I totally get that when you've got those really large characters. And I've actually, the longest book I've ever written, which is, I think it's coming up to 130,000 words.
Oh God, that's long. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been Harold's book, and it's just a case of he doesn't want the story to add, that I'm sitting here thinking, I've got to cut this book in half or something. It's just
definitely
huge. But I love him as well, because he's this tormented soul that just things just keep going wrong for him. You want to hate him, but at the same time you just feel sorry for him. And it doesn't help me that I've based it on a friend. So
that can be difficult, because the truth can hobble you. So you can find that actually you end up getting yourself a bit tangled up in the truth, when actually the fiction.
When I started it had a lot of him in it, but Harold's really sort of become his own, which is good. However, I did get a text from him one day saying, "Is this character me?" Because I forgot to tell him. And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Why Harold? What an awful name." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So, side note for beginner writers, if you do that, let your friend know ahead of time.
Definitely get their approval, or they might just turn around and sue you. So you need to be careful using real people, generally to be avoided. No, my characters are all very much fictional, and definitely try and sometimes there'll be blends. Obviously, I think we draw on what we know, don't we? And people we know and places and stuff. So often they're blends of different things. But I was doing an interview yesterday and one this morning, and it was just we were talking about characters and jobs and names and things like that. And I think it's just really interesting to develop characters. I find that very that's always part of the challenge, getting to know new people.
Do you separate, like, so when you're plotting out your books, I'm assuming you plot?
Yeah.
Because in murder mysteries, I always think if you're not plotting, it must be a lot harder to write.
Yeah, I didn't actually plot Mystery of Four in much detail at all.
Oh, wow.
I plotted all the others. So Mystery of Four is my eighth book, and I've
Yeah.
got the ninth book, which is coming out. Well, the ninth adult book, which will be coming out in no, it'll actually be book 10. Will be coming out in January 2024. I
Yeah.
started plotting it out, and with that one, I decided by about chapter 5 that I really liked the character. The character I was about to kill off, I really liked, and I didn't want to kill her. So I thought, no, I'm not going to do this. And it was a book I wrote during COVID, and so it wasn't under contract or anything. So I just thought, no, I'm just going to keep going. I don't want to go back to the detailed plot. Well, it's not that detailed, but it's fairly detailed plot that I'd written, and
Yeah.
start all over again and see why I couldn't be bothered with any of that. So I thought, no, I'll just keep writing it, and it worked really well. So with Mystery of Four, I thought I'd try. I love with each book to try and challenge myself a bit more. And with Mystery of Four, I had a clear outline of where I wanted to go with it and what was going to happen. But I wanted to see where the characters took me and the story took me. So yeah, I didn't plot that one so much.
Yeah, I think that, like, particularly, I started a dystopian, and it's not finished yet because it's COVID just totally derailed me entirely. Um, but yeah, like, I found myself, because it was dystopian, I had the plot of what I was wanting to do, but then I had to have a secondary book which was just character information,
Yeah, a
because I
character
soon
Bible.
found myself just getting way down in this. Does she have what was her hair color again? And because, like, with YA, I think you have to remember so many details,
Well, I think
more details, I would say.
anything big like that or a series, then
Yeah,
yeah. In TV they call it a character Bible,
yeah,
and if you're doing anything series wise, then that's absolutely essential to add to it, because
yeah,
if you write particularly a long running series, you suddenly mention Aunt Mabel's dog. 4 years after Aunt Mabel's dog died, and if you get the name wrong, somebody's going to remember.
and
So
tell
yeah,
you. Yep,
yeah,
yep,
so character Bibles are absolutely. Yeah, when I wrote my first three books were a police procedural trilogy, and featuring a girl called Kat Conley, and I wrote a character Bible for that just to keep all the names in check. And also, when you write lots of books, I find you can accidentally reuse names,
yeah. I've
and then
discovered that too.
then I'm left with the challenge of like trying to work out, well, trying to explain why this person has the same name as somebody else. So somebody might end up being somebody's cousin, or cousin third removed, and that has happened to me before, and I've ended up trying to patch things together, which works. It's fun, I think. What I try to do when I write is create a universe. So
Same,
as a
yeah,
Sam Blake world. And there are certain characters who will reappear. They're not necessarily reappear, but you'll get glimpses of them in different books, and certain brands. So Number 42 is a brand, a jewellery company, which is in Keep Your Eyes on Me, which is my first psychological thriller. And that's about a jewellery designer who's going to New York to get a job, and meet somebody on the plane, and they end up hatching plots together. But she's going to work for this company called Number 42. So in the subsequent books, you'll find people with pieces of jewellery from Number 42, which is also something in that world. And people stay in the same hotels and things like that. And I love that idea of the fact that they are their own people in their own world.
yeah.
So yeah, trying to build that very much.
My big challenge when I did Marie's World was I wanted the readers to feel like they were part of that universe almost. So they weren't just reading, like, Marie's story or Layla's story or whoever's it was. I wanted them to feel like they were actually sitting in the audience,
Yeah, well, that's
experiencing a
absolutely,
lot
it's
of it.
absolutely essential, isn't it? That
Yeah.
your reader feels like they're in the book with the
I
characters.
wish I'd done character Bibles for that one. I was like, there's 5 books and there's like 32 plotted, which I have never gotten back to, but there's 32 plotted, and it's that way where I'm like, I know the characters well enough that I won't make the mistakes, but at the same time I'm like,
Although with that many books, you'd forget things. So yeah, no, you
yeah,
definitely need. Perhaps need to go back before you get stuck
I'm
into
going to
them.
have to, yeah, because I
Make
was
notes.
like thinking of, because both of them have been in love triangles their entire lives, I'm going to have to go back and remember, like, who was with who then, and who was with who here, and I'll just have to plot out the relationships again, because it's just, that was the thing about that series, was when I worked with my co-author, he was like a mind trap for detail. So if I would take it to a certain point and he'd be like, okay, you forgot this, 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 and this, go back.
Yeah,
And I would and we just went through chapter by chapter, and he said it was such a fun process to do that and just experience the characters building and the world sort of worlds is the only way I know how to write, so this world kind of comes up. But funnily enough, my actual start in writing came from a wrestling writer, so they kind of drill into you 3D characters. I don't know if you remember this, but there was this big thing at these conferences a couple of years ago where they were going on about, we want 3D characters, we want these characters to be somebody you want to have a beer with or you want to meet in a restaurant or whatever. And I was sitting there thinking, I've done this all the entire time. Like,
well, I think every character needs to be three-dimensional.
yeah,
There's not even a. It's, if you have a two-dimensional character, they're just not going to feel real, and they're not. You know, your reader isn't going to be living in the story.
yeah.
And that's.
But there is the characters that are 2D out there that are bestsellers. You know.
But their books are never going to be as good as or as lift. Your reader is never going to be as involved with them, I think, unless the characters have all those flaws and things. I teach a lot of creative writing and run a big writers group, and developing character is just really, really important.
I'll spend months just putting the characters together before I'll even write the concept of the plot, because to me, like, if the characters aren't there and you don't know their individual personalities, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to work.
No, you need to. Yeah, I like them. I like them. I like to have some basic pieces in place. I like to know what they look like and what their names are and what jobs they've done and how old, when they were 18, what was what was in the charts, what were the formative things that made them the way they were. But in order to get them consistent and to make sure their motivation is consistent, you need to understand a huge amount of their backstory. So, are we videoing or is this just podcast? I've forgotten now.
It's just audio. No need to worry.
Because I was going to show you my storyboard. I create storyboards for different books so that you can. So I have all the pictures of the characters. So I go around the internet and find the pictures of the characters who look like the characters who are in my head. And it doesn't matter who they are. They could be famous actresses or they might not be at all. There might be somebody nobody has even heard of. And then I create storyboards for each one. And when I'm creating those, I create them so that I have a lot of location pictures as well. It's just a big A2, I think, board. And I'm able to group the subplot sort of bits together so that people around the different story areas are put together on the board. But I find that really useful because I'm quite busy doing all sorts of bits and pieces as well as writing, and it really helps me dip into
I think it does.
The story.
Yeah, I mean, I think because when I wrote my stuff, I was actually involved with the dancing, I was involved with the wrestling, so it was there all the time. I couldn't turn the blinkers on and just forget about the world and the plot and the books. And I was actually plotting the characters way before I even met my co-author. And it wasn't until I met him that I got the final piece for me to be able to run it and actually write it. So I get for me, I have to physically have been there to really soak up an atmosphere in order to then put it into my books. And I have taken sort of lots of lessons from many of these best-selling authors that I get this amazing opportunity to sit and talk to, and I find that it's building into my work, and the work is getting to that point where I'm happier because I can see almost like I'm sponging it up. And that's why I love this, because we share this. This is like a natural conversation between two people, and we share this. And then other writers who listen to this, they hear it, and then they kind of go about it too.
I find that I organise a lot of events and have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people now at this stage, and I find I learn something new every single time. I either speak to a writer or listen to one every single time. It's just some way they think. Or I was talking to Linwood Barclay the other day, and he was talking about looking at the ends of chapters, and he thinks of them as the commercial breaks on TV. So always says,
that's how I do it as well.
Yeah, you get to the end of the chapter, and he says, right, this is a commercial break, so you need to bring the people back. Okay, they might have gone to put the kettle on, or they've gone to the loo, or whatever they've done, but you need to have something that's going to pull them back. So that cliffhanger at the end of every chapter needs to be like the commercial break, but you need enough before it so that they're going to come back to your story. And I love that idea. So yeah, there's loads. I think literally, I was talking to Joanne Harris as well the other day, and it was a while ago, and she was talking about the fact that she only writes 300 words a day. And I'm always quoting that to people because I just find that enormously liberating, that somebody can write, somebody of her stature, and she has written loads of books, can actually just say to herself, right, she writes 300 words a day, that's what she aims for, and then anything over that is a bonus. But I just think that's wonderful, because it gives you freedom, I think, to not worry about word counts and those types of things.
That's something that we hear a lot on this podcast, because I've had so many teachers on, I've had so many sort of really determined writers. I use Nano kind of as my kick up my bum, because I can't lie to it, and I'm like, okay, I gotta do 300 words or 600 words or whatever it is. And I go and I do it, because I know that I need to feed the information in at the end of the day. And it does help, because I sort of get that flow and I get that feeling going. But if I'm sick or I'm having a bad day, I don't feel so bad if it's only 300 words.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, I don't even write every day. I write when if I'm writing, if I'm stuck into a book, and I have periods when I'm writing, then I will try and aim for about 5,000-6,000 words a week. So sometimes I get those done during the week, and there might be the odd days where I'm doing 1,000, 1,500, and there might be days when I've got so many meetings or I'm travelling or whatever and I can't write anything. So then I'll try and make it up at weekends, and maybe write 3,000 or 4,000 words over a weekend, and try and do it that way, just when I'm really focused. So I write quite quickly once everything's sort of sorted out, everything, I can move forwards. But obviously I'm working to deadline too, so I have to make sure that everybody gets the right things at the right time. So
yeah, deadlines are a huge inspiration, especially for me, because I will be a procrastinator terribly, and then I'll be like, oh crap, I've got a deadline in like 4.5 weeks, I really should get this done. And I will become, like Ian calls me, zombie, because I will forget to eat and I forget to sleep, and he'll have to come in and remind me of these things till I get it finished, and then he'll be like, okay, it's done, you can sleep. Because I'll just wake up at 2 in the morning and be like, oh, I've got it, and then I'll run through, and he'll be like, bed. Because it's, he keeps an eye on me, otherwise I just end up creatively driving myself into a hole. So yeah, I think our partners actually play a lot in our lives as writers. I don't think I know a lot of people that has come on the show have actually realized how much their partners play a huge role in their lives, but for me, if I didn't have Ian, I'd probably never have done the podcast. My hair would be standing out 5 feet from my head, and I would look horrendous. So yeah. Do you find that
talking through ideas with people is really useful? I talk to my kids, or I talk to writer friends, and then I do in the writers group I run. I have a thing on a Tuesday where I do this thing called Tuesday Tips, which is basically a bit of a diary and tips relating to writing, usually based on what I'm working on at the time. And I find that really useful, because it's a great way it helps you crystallise ideas when you're putting it down for somebody, and you're talking about whatever issue it is that you're dealing with. That can help hugely in terms of creating ideas and giving you jumping off points. But talking things through is great. Even if it's just yourself making notes, it's a great way to move the story forwards, I think.
Yeah, I've done that too. Just talking to myself. I'll be doing like the dishes or something, then I'll end up talking to the cat. Because like hubby's out, do whatever, and I'm like, I just got to get this out. Okay, ooh, there's a cat. Yeah, that'll work. You just go for it. I do get some puzzled looks from them occasionally, so
that's what cats are great for. Cats are brilliant company. So you had a list of questions, didn't you? I can't remember what's next on.
Yeah, let's go for it. So, what have you read most recently, sort of, that stuck with you? Have you read anything that's really sort of gripped you?
I literally just finished Lessons in Chemistry, which I thought was amazing. I think we're all Elizabeth Zott, and I just really, really, really loved that book. So it was excellent. Everything about it was brilliant. Different structure, interesting narrative voices, and breaking lots of rules. But I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a brilliant characterisation. Yeah, so that was great.
So if life was calm and you were retired and everything's peaceful, who would you sit and read? You get a series and an author, but they have to be 2 different authors.
Okay, so I'm not somebody who does calm. I'm somebody who does something all the time. I'm not like a stopping person. So if I was going to read, I don't know, I'd probably read I love Lisa Gardner, so I'd read whatever she was writing if she was writing a series. I can't reread books. I have a very, very strong visual memory, and so I can't reread. I don't generally, except Rebecca is the only book I would reread. So it would have to be a new series. So whatever was new, I suppose, out there, and whatever was new in terms of a standalone as well. There's always something fantastic coming. I'm judging the John Creasy Dagger at the moment, which is for the Crime Writers Association, and we've been seeing some amazing books coming through. They're all debuts, and the standard of the writing is phenomenal and brilliant ideas. I'm just loving that. So yeah, anything new. I love debuts. I love the fact that somebody's taken the trouble to work hard enough and to learn the craft, and jumped through all of those hoops to get their book out there, because it's so exciting. And
it is, and it's so hard nowadays. That's why I keep saying to people, it might feel like you're papering your house with rejection letters, but it's worth it when you get that one that says,
yeah, you only need one person to believe in you. Absolutely.
And always take it on board. Like, even if you're getting a not now, we'll read it when you've revised it, that's still progress. You're still taking steps forward.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing. You have to keep moving forwards and have something out there that could be a yes. You just never know.
Yep. So, what authors would you say has inspired you, influenced you, and made you excited about writing?
So I would. I really love Michael Connelly. I love Lisa Gardner. I love Lee Child when I started writing. I was reading those avidly, and I think it was probably Michael Connelly's The Black Echo, the first one, that really made me think, I'm really into crime and really embrace crime, I think. But for me, my favourite book is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I just adore that book, and that's the book I can reread because it's just so multi-layered. There's so much in it.
Have you tried Fiona Cummings yet, or?
I haven't read any. I have read some of Fiona's yet, but I haven't read them recently. So yeah.
I will tell you, I read the recent one. They sent it to me, and we had her on the show. Actually, it was incredible. She did an absolutely incredible job with it. Because I got her when her first book came out, the Bold Collectors series came out, or the duology.
I think I read that was the one I read a while ago now.
And I thought, this is incredible, and this has one of the characters from that. And I thought, it took me a second, because I have that thing with the visualness as well. When I read something, it sticks, and I was like, I know that name, and I went back and I checked, and I thought, this is incredible. I love crime, and then I share it with my aunt and my mother-in-law, because they're big crime readers. I just also read Jane Harper for the first time.
Yeah, Jane Harper's books are amazing. Yeah, absolutely love Jane.
Yeah, so I've just read her new one that's out it'll be out by the time this is out. It was in February.
Yeah, I have that on my desk right next to me here, Exiles.
Oh, trust me, you want to read it.
Yeah.
That one, though, to me was The Queen of Slow Burn. That was the sentence I walked away from when I had to think about it for the review. I was like, what did this say to me? And I'm like, Queen of Slow Burn, because that whole book was just that design. It was just designed to be the slow burning thing. So yeah, I've just been blown away. I also had a completely... I don't read horror, by the way. I am a wuss.
Yeah, no, I don't either at all.
No, and so when they sent me a fantasy that was kind of horror, I was a bit anxious, and I read Book Eaters. Totally, absolutely, incredibly done. It does have its I would not say it's more gory than a crime novel. It wasn't that kind of horror. It was the horror of you're constantly like, what's happening?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I loved it. I loved just how she done it, and we had Sunny Dean on the show, and just hearing her journey, and then reading the book, I was like, I could see so much of her in it, just by listening to what she'd said and sort of things like that. So I would actually try that one, because if you're really visual, that one would.
Yeah, I have to say, is that fantasy horror? Is it? That's not
no,
me.
I mean, that's what it's classed. It's classed as that, but I wouldn't have thought it was that, if you know what I mean. Like, the publishers has put that titles on it, but that's not how it came across to me at all.
Yeah.
I would say it's more like a fantasy thriller than
Yeah.
I would say anything else. Because you're trying to work out, well, how is this poor girl going to survive this unspeakable world? And I wouldn't even have. It's such a different take. You should check it out and see what you think. It's not very long. It's 298 pages, but yeah, it's something else.
Something different, anyway. Yeah.
That's the other good thing about this show is we all share book like recommendations. So everybody who's ever been on probably gets recommended more than once of the show. But yeah, no, it's cracking. I have found out today I will be having Chris Lloyd on very shortly.
Excellent.
He will have been on by the time this comes out. But yeah, that was an incredible one that we did today. So when you go to the bookstore, where do you go? Like, where's your number one genre to go to nosy
Crime.
about in?
Crime. That's what I read. That's what I write. I think it's really important to read what you write.
Yeah.
Read around the genre. Crime's a huge genre. I also I run something called, or I'm involved in running National Crime Reading Month, and one of the joys of that is to try and bring readers to crime, to all the different elements of crime. You know, that it's not just police procedurals and dead bodies on the floor. It is, you know, way beyond that. There's crime fantasy, there's crime romance, there's Wild West crime, there's a whole huge area. You know,
it's a universe,
yeah, huge. So yeah, that's where I go. So and it's great reading the John Creasy Dagger list means I'm reading. I've got about 70 or 80 books to read, and it's just fabulous to see the breadth of stuff that's coming through. It's really great. So yeah, it's good, and that means you're reading outside of your comfort zone or outside of your necessarily your natural genre too, which is brilliant. So I think it's nearly like being in a book club where you might get something that you wouldn't normally pick up for whatever reason. And there's been some fantastic books, so I'm really enjoying doing that.
I must admit, since I opened myself up to doing reviews for publishers, there's so many books that have arrived that I'd never heard of people, half of the names that came through my door. And I was like, overwhelmed a bit at the beginning. I'm like, okay, and just as I've moved through it, I'm like, I really like this author. I'll probably look into them a bit more and follow them a bit more, and it has opened up my mind. And one of the things that I've said in the past is, if you're just a normal person and you sign up for like Fairy Loot or Illumicrate or any of these sort of book box things, they're great because they're sending you books and authors debut most of the time, authors that you'll never have heard of, and you end up with this really great experience. And when I actually was talking to you there, I was just thinking, the Curiosity Club you would adore because they send you puzzles and you've got to work, and it's like it's like you're the detective, so you're getting the file and you're getting all these, and they send it in a little box every week, and you've got to figure out who it is. And they do a thriller one as well where the killer's after you, so you've got to figure out who he is before he gets you, kind of thing. Which I think is great. I think if you're a really true big lover of crime, it gives you that chance to play out that kind of role yourself, but in a safe way. I keep saying safe way.
Fun. Yeah.
You know. So have you come across the god awful book yet? The one that you just thought, why did I start reading this? And before you answer, I always explain this. As reviewers, we all find books that we can't review because of whatever reason, it's just not for us. So what I do on the show is I give examples to people who are starting out reviewing and might put down things like did not finish, or this is terrible, or, you know, the awful comments that we all get as authors. And I'm just using the show as a great way to explain there's other ways of dealing with a book you don't like. You don't need to go on Goodreads or Amazon and bash it.
You just move on. You don't need
just
to tell
move
everybody
on
about it, do you? No, exactly. Yeah. No,
so have you had that moment where you've gotten a book where you just can't read it and you've had to put it away and just forget about it?
No, not recently. I don't. I have very little time because I do quite a lot of things. So I make sure that if I'm reading something, that's something I want to read. I've loved everything that's come in for the Dagger Award so far. There's been a whole big range of stuff. The only thing I don't like in books is mistakes in procedure, and that does upset me, because I think if it's as a writer, you have a contract with your reader. You're asking somebody to buy your book and then spend potentially 8 hours of their lifetime reading it, and you have an obligation and a contract with your reader to deliver the best possible product that you can. And I think possibly because I'm a procedural writer too, that I find if people have made mistakes in police procedure here in Ireland, that upsets me, because I think it's your obligation as a writer to try and find out to the best of your ability what way things would happen. Yeah. So when something completely ridiculous happens and you're just like, well, there's no way a detective would do that, just no way. Then that jerks me out of the story, and that would upset me. But hasn't happened recently, fortunately.
I must admit, one of the things that I did when I started working on a crime novel was I got a hold of a retired detective. He must hate me something off. And I would send him questions. I'd be like, oh, could we do this, or can I do that, or how would you handle this? And he would take it apart and he would explain it to me, and he goes, never had anybody as interested as you. And I was like, I'm just a writer. But yeah, like, I think it is a duty of research, making sure you know what you're talking about when you go into writing it, so that you don't make the mistakes that every reader who's probably watched a dozen true crime shows or a dozen, films.
As a crime author, you're working with people, your readers. They're intelligent people. They're people who enjoy the puzzles and the crosswords, and who do watch true crime and watch huge amount of police stuff on TV. And so you have to have respect for your reader too. And that's why I always do a lot of research in terms of people's jobs and stuff like that, so that if you are an airline pilot or a ballerina, or a jewellery designer, that if you're reading it, it feels like the character who's in that, whose role that is real and is doing what you would do. I think that's just really important. I think it's important to take your reader seriously and to appreciate that they really are using their time. Time is very valuable these days, and that they are, they're putting themselves out to read your book. So I want to hold them, I want to grip them, I want them to keep turning the pages, and deliver satisfying twists that they're not going to see coming at the end, and so there's a payoff, and that they feel when they get to the end of the book that it was a really, really satisfying read.
And I think it's great that we're seeing that level of respect growing, because I think for the longest time a lot of people didn't know what happened in police investigations, but because we are seeing like the first 48 hours, and we've been seeing all these kind of other shows coming out, it is making them question writing now more than they ever did. And I think that's good, because it makes us have to stay up to date with what's going on, and to know everything that's going on. So I think it's good. I think we're kind of having a give and take. So moving into the writing portion of the podcast, how did you go about creating the darker characters that appear in your storyline?
I think there's dark characters everywhere in life, so they're just the same as all the other characters, except that they have. I think for me, it's all about motivation. When you're creating character, you need to understand their motivation, why they think the way they do. I do a lot of research into psychology and into sort of the way people react in situations, and look at a lot, proper research in terms of people's mental health and all sorts of other things, the way they might react to certain situations. And so I think that's the darker characters are all about motivation. It's, if I understand why somebody's doing something, even if it's bizarre, or they want to go around killing people, then that's important. And it's important for the reader too, that everything makes sense, that the motivation is correct and consistent all the way through. So you don't get somebody doing something just because they want to. I mean, there are people out there, sociopaths or whatever, who do just do stuff because they're just bad. But I think there's always a reason for that, so you have to track that back. So so darker characters, just the same as the lighter characters really, but just with understanding their motivation and looking into their backstory more. working out why they want to do something or why they're motivated to do something.
I mean, it's the same for me. Like when I was thinking about a lot of my stuff, I think, well, why would they do that? You know, how would they justify it to somebody else? So you almost play kind of like lawyer, I think it's the way I put it, because you sit there and you've got to defend this character's actions to somebody else. And my best friend, if I get a hold of her, I'll be like, "Can I run something by you?" See, as soon as I say run something by her, she goes, "Oh God," and I'll defend that character all the way through, and we have that kind of laugh about it. But it makes the stories richer, it makes the characters richer, and I've had so many my readers come back and say, "Wow, you got really deep in this one," and I'd be like, that's because I spent like 2 months picking people's brains defending this actions these characters have made. So yeah, I think it's a really good tool to use. So what made you pick your genre? I know that you love it, but what was the moment where you were like, "No, this is the genre that I'm going to do"?
I think it's something that's I've always read crime. I've always been interested in crime. I'm interested in puzzles. I'm interested in what goes on behind closed doors, and so there was never a case of picking a genre. It was just that's what I do, and I've going right all the way back to Enid Blyton's The Famous Five. They were the books that I loved as a child, and when I speak to other crime writers, they're very similar, and I've always grown up with that. I always think that crime readers, as I mentioned before, are the people who love the puzzles, who want an intellectual challenge, who want to be stretched with a book. I always love learning something new as well when I'm reading a book. So, picking something up that I didn't know before. So it's not really a case of consciously deciding that I want to write crime. That's what I've always read, and it's the type of story that's the way my mind works. So,
It makes sense that it's good to have that, I always say, foundation base, because I started off with historical and Catherine Cookson, and then my grandmother was like, "I think this is an inappropriate level you should be reading," and then she introduced me to like Marianne Carley and Celia Reese, and I started reading a lot of that. And to be honest, I think they drove me to be a writer and be proud of that. But yeah, I think if you don't have a good base and you don't really know that market, it can be so much harder.
I think it's vital. I don't think you can write in a genre you don't read, because you don't understand the tropes and you don't understand what else is out there, and
the rules, I call it. Yeah.
Sorry, understand
the rules. I call it rules.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just understanding how it works and what works and what doesn't work, and the best of it. You want to try and be the best that you possibly can be, and your book to be the best that it can be. And I think you need to read. You need to understand what it is you're writing in order to be able to do that. So.
And of course, me being young and spontaneous, I thought at the time sports romance wasn't a thing, and I thought, I'm going to do sports romance, but I'm going to do it with wrestling. And of course, it's never been done before. And it's only now starting to change, where you are seeing a lot more different sports. It's not just basketball and football. So you are seeing like golf, and you're seeing all these other things. But I didn't have rules to begin with, so I wish I had. I wish I'd started in a genre that was established and moved on from there.
The rules of romance apply whatever your setting is, don't they? So inverted commas.
It was the balancing of the sports element in the romance. I found very difficult. But once I got it, I was really comfortable with it. So now I'm just sort of moving into other things that I've read tons of that I know really well. Whether it's Viking stories I've grown up with, or whether it's, historical stories I grew up with in Shetland. I've sort of pulled on that, and I'm starting to write more of that, because I do love my historical, I do love my crime. Much to the horror, I think, of all the locals that grew up with me, and they're like, "Wait, our classmates, what?" But yeah, I think rules are really important, because if you don't know them, you can make some huge mistakes that
I think
just destroy you.
There are rules and everything, but rules in writing are made to be broken, because once you understand what they are, then you can push the boundaries of the genre. But yeah, there are things that you don't.
Right.
In order to make the writing better, I think, it's all to do with the reader experience, and understanding who your reader is, and the type of what they're going to want, and I think that's you have to read. You have to know what they're reading in order to be able to deliver.
So when you're writing, is it movie style, or do you just sort of see like a broken mirror that you've got to put back together like a jigsaw puzzle?
No, I suppose I just see the story. Just the story plays out in my head as I'm writing. I don't know if that's movie style, but
we would call that movie style.
I don't think in terms of movies and whether it's going to be a movie as I'm writing it. But no, I see the story as it's evolving, and obviously the characters take over and do things I don't expect as we're moving forwards. But I think that's how I write. As I say, I plotted it out to a certain extent beforehand. I didn't plot the mystery for particularly that. I mean, there was a lot of editing to do afterwards. But generally speaking, I've got a very clear idea at the beginning and often the end. I like to have a very clear picture of where I'm going. So I know what the end scene's going to be, even if I don't know exactly what happens. And then obviously some of the hiccups along the way I'll have a clear idea of. So I know what I'm working towards the whole time. And that's the way I suppose I write, yeah.
That's really good, because in some ways when I begin a plot, it's like shattered pieces of glass. I know there's a story there. I just got to put the pieces in the right order. And then once it is in the right order, it's just a movie for me. So I have a bit of both going on, which is a nightmare, to be honest, sometimes, because you always think you're missing a piece, I think, and that piece is, when you finish it, that's when it becomes whole, I think.
Well, hopefully at the end of the first draft you've got an idea. You've certainly an idea at the end of the first draft of what the story's going to be and who the characters are and what's happening. So,
but for me, it's getting to the end of the first draft and not feeling that need that I've forgotten something. I think that's my crushing one. It doesn't matter if you have,
because you can always add it in.
But it is that crushing moment of what have I forgotten? There's like, you know it's something, but you just feel like you can't work it out. And once the story's completely pulled out, I'll sit with Ian and I'll go, I can't figure out what's missing. Or I'll sit with somebody else and I'll say, I can't figure this out, and they'll look at me and go, well, obviously it's that. And I'll be like, why can't I see that? Like, frustration. But for me, I do several hundreds of drafts because of my dyslexia, which, by the way, is been such a huge hurdle in itself to overcome, because I have to read to keep the grammar in my head. And honestly, like, I'm educating my mind all the time by reading, so I have to take time out every day and I'll read 20 pages at least, just to keep it going. But do you find, or have you worked with a lot of other authors out there that might have had dyslexia or other things that they've had to overcome?
My sister's very dyslexic, yeah. I have worked with lots of them, actually, and I think the tools these days that we have now which can help you are huge and really beneficial. So, and I think it's also about understanding the type of dyslexia you have, and the things that can help you make things clearer, and that's really important. But I think it's also, it's really important for people to understand that it's not, you don't have to see it, well, I don't think you need to see it as a barrier, that you just need to get past that. And even if the draft you write is peppered with typos and bits and pieces that aren't quite right, that doesn't matter, because somebody else can always fix it. We've got software these days that can fix things. We've got copy editors, we've got proofreaders, and that's what their job is. So your job is to find the story, and that's your gift. And that's, as a writer, that's what you're trying to do, is just find the story and make the story elements work, and the actual detail of the writing and the grammar and all that can always be fixed. Your first draft is about finding the story and getting that ready, and everything else can be fixed afterwards. There'll always be somebody who can come along and sort it all out for you. So I think it's really important that people don't see that as a barrier, and that they can just move past it. I work with quite a few, particularly in my writing group. I've got some people who are quite dyslexic, and it is a challenge for them. It is without question a challenge, but their storytelling ability is all there. So it's just a case of trying to get as much as they can on the page, even if that means.
It's very frustrating though if you've been through an edit like 3 or 4 times and you still miss that one bit.
I do too. I miss stuff. I've just done page proofs of something, and I just missed a whole load of bits and repetition and a whole load of stuff that you only see in that particular format. But even if it means talking into your computer and or talking to your phone, and recording a voice and then getting the software to transcribe that and working off that, then there are always ways around these problems. I think that's the thing. Is to
I'm learning the software, because when I first realized I was dyslexic, I was such a young teenager, and I had such a heavy Shetland Scottish accent. The computer just couldn't understand me.
Understand it, yeah.
It was awful. Dragon Dictate, I think it was like 2 or 3 at the time, and it just I didn't stand a chance. But by going and talking to so many different types of people all over the world, I've sort of washed away that heavy accent, so I've now got a much simpler one. And sometimes I will just turn on the mic and I will just talk and let it do it, and then I'll go in and fix all the, the spacing or the paragraph or whatever it is.
To do afterwards, yeah. But I think the software we have now, certainly with AI technology coming through more, it learns, and there will be, it won't be long before there is software that can pick up accents as well and can manage fine with that, because it learns computer, it's all to do with the computer learning, and it's not necessarily the best thing, and there's lots of areas where AI is quite questionable in terms of copyright and all sorts of other things, but in terms of machine learning, and one of my kids is doing a master's at the moment in machine learning, is the one element of that, and it's just really interesting. They can do anything really, so
which of your characters have stayed with you the most, would you say?
I think all my characters stay with me. It's like they're in, because they're in their world, and there are some characters who I feel I write and their story isn't necessarily over. So there's a book I've written. I have a readers club, which people can visit on my website, which is sambladebooks.com. And if you go to join the readers club, then you can download a free copy of a book called High Pressure, and that features a character called Anna Lockhart, who was in the 3rd Cat Connolly book. And also a girl called Briony O'Brien, who is in a book I wrote called Remember My Name. And I when I wrote High Pressure, I didn't really feel Anna's story was over, and I felt there was more for her. So, but I didn't know what it was. So I finished the Cat Connolly book, and I sort of thought when I first thought of her, I thought maybe she could be a series character, because she's a very, very strong character. And she didn't become a series character. She ended up in the Cat Connolly book, and she's significant in that book. But then she comes forward, and then she's a big character in High Pressure. So she stayed with me. And then Briony, who's in that book too. When I sat down to write Remember My Name, it's about cybersecurity, and I needed a tech expert. And so she was sitting there ready and waiting to go into that book. She's a fantastic character. She's got pink hair, and she's really, really bright, and is now working in Remember My Name. She's working in Dublin for a big cybersecurity company, but she's able to infiltrate somebody's computer in order to find out what they've been up to. And Remember My Name is a very fast-paced urban book all about cybersecurity, so to a certain extent a lot of personalities in that too, but so I suppose they stay with me. But I think they all stay with me, because it's like having friends, in a village or whatever, or friends at university who maybe you don't see that often, but that they don't stop being friends. They're out there, and so they stay with me. I think all of them do. Yeah.
Have you got a character that you still feel like you need to write more of?
Write more of. Who might come back? I don't know. I love Clarissa in The Mystery of Four. She's brilliant, and she was a lot of fun to write. So I think she will definitely feature again, and she won't feature necessarily as a main character in a book, but I think she might pop up somewhere. I'm just trying to think now, moving forwards, the book that's coming out in 2024, which is about a doctor called Carla Steele. This is a bit complicated, but her partner is a forensic psychologist, and she's in The Mystery of Four. We only just see her as a walk-on part in The Mystery of Four. So there's a few people. They all interconnect. They're all in the world. So we'll wait and see. I don't know. I never know. When I start a book, I've got an idea who the cast is, but I don't know who's going to pop up.
So what's been the most helpful technique that you've had, and what's been the least helpful technique that you've tried?
Technique. I think learning to write and learning your craft as writing, there's no specific technique. You have to master everything. So you need to master everything from showing, not telling, to dialogue, to writing description. I love writing great description. I love writing locations. I think location for me needs to be a character in the story. So that I want you in Shetland to be able to read a book and feel like you're in Bloomsbury or you're in New York or you're in Wicklow, the Mystery Falls set in Wicklow, and I want you to feel like you've been there. So that's really, really important. I don't know, I suppose the techniques that aren't useful. There aren't really any. There certainly aren't any that I use. I can't think of anything.
Well, for me, I couldn't get pantsing to work, so
Couldn't get
that
what?
was a time I couldn't get pantsing to work.
What's that?
That's when you don't plot anything and you just write. I couldn't get it to work.
Yeah. Well, I'm a plotter. I think understanding how you write, and understanding your own technique and developing your own technique is part of the process. And so that listening to other writers and learning from them and continually evolving is really, really important. And so therefore you understand, once you understand, like, when your creative time is and how you think, I could sit down and write something like that without plotting it at all, but I need to have, I feel better going into something with a strong idea, because then it's bursting to come out of me. So it's it's understanding. I don't have time to try pantsering anything. Do you know what I mean? It's not at this stage. It's like you need to have. I have to have it if I'm.
I know a lot of people they'll go and they'll buy sort of like the books on different techniques to write. Big pantsing, vision boards, and they will go and they will try each one of the textbooks till they find their own technique. And I keep saying, just write, and either you'll learn that you need to plot, or you'll learn that you can just write it as is. But it'll come to you. It's not something that you can go and study all these textbooks and learn. It's just part of who you are.
I think you do have to study to a certain extent, and you have to listen, and otherwise you don't know what you're doing, and you can spend an awful long time doing the wrong thing. So all those textbooks and the authors and the people who are talking about the way their techniques, you need to be like a magpie. You need to listen to everybody, read as much as you can, but don't just because somebody says this is the way I do it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I think that's what you're saying there. That's it's the understanding of the fact that you need to develop your own way of doing things, but we're all different in everything we do. We're different, we look different, we sound different, and writing is the same. We all write differently. Our creativity is different, and that's why writing is so fantastic, and why writers and books are so amazing, is because everybody's creativity is different, and we're all coming up with different storylines, and we've got different voices, and the only way you can develop your own voice and your own storyline is through that sort of magpie method of drawing things in. And you'll make lots of mistakes. I wrote 5 books before Little Bones, which was my debut novel, but I needed to write those. Little Bones was the 5th book, so I needed to write the 4 previous books in order to perfect my craft and to understand what I was doing and, really get the hang of it, so that when Little Bones came out, it was a bestseller. It went straight to number 1. And I was blessed, and it was fantastic, and it's launched an amazing career. But it took that time to understand, I suppose, the mechanics of writing and understand how I write, and learning, and just it is a constant learning process. So I think we're all magpies, and we need to be, and you need to be like that. You need to be drawing in and trying new things, and some things will work for you and some things won't, but you don't know that until you try it. So.
And determination. I always say that you need to be determined, because there will be times where you just feel, I can't do this, I'm going to go do something else. But if you're determined and you keep going and you keep pushing and you keep at it, then eventually you will make it. It's just, you just got to be determined and persistent.
The best advice I was ever given was just keep writing, and that's it. You just have to keep going, and you will get there, but it might take longer than you think, and it might not be the first book that you write that gets published, but yeah, keep going. That's the most important thing, because every single word, I said right at the start, every single word you write makes you a better writer. Every single book that you write, every single story that you come up with, you're learning new things as you move forwards, and it's all making you better. So that's what you're trying to do, and what we all need to try and do, I think, is improve constantly. When none of us needs, I certainly don't want to stay the same. I want to make sure, try and improve each book, so that I'm giving the reader a better experience each time.
So moving into your life, and this is just really about you and about sort of how you live your everyday life. because I think a lot of writers out there, they think of us as these in these big houses with people that do the shopping and the washing, and we just sit and write at our computers all day, which is probably farther from the truth. So what's your first thing you do when you want to de-stress from editing and writing?
Um, when I'm active, I'm going to the gym, um, but I
Right.
don't. I'm not somebody who really switches off. So I tend to be doing the thing I love doing, and my relaxation is writing. So I run 2 or 3 companies on a normal basis, and obviously plan lots of events and do things like that.
Yeah.
And so for me, writing is my relaxation. So that's the thing I do that I love more than anything else. So I don't really see it as a job as such. It's
Yeah.
that creative time is the most. That starting a book is the most exciting time ever. You know, when you're starting, you've got a new idea and you're playing with it, and the ideas come together. I'm
Yeah.
never very keen on the bit where it's sort of floating around still and it's not a thing, um, especially when you're under deadline. But
Yeah.
I love that sense of the promise that a new book can bring. That when you're sitting down to start writing it, and I find that's my de-stress, I suppose.
So what hobbies do you enjoy, and are there ones you wish you could explore more?
Writing is my hobby. It's my job and my hobby. That's it. I'm in the gym a bit, but that's it. That's what I do. Yeah, that's me.
So are you somebody that likes crafts, and do you find that crafts are good for clearing your mind?
Don't no time for that. I'm afraid. No,
You'd
I
actually
run. I
be,
run 2 companies. I run a
yeah.
publishing consultancy and I run a website called
Yeah.
Writing.ie, and I program events. And I'm on the board of two. I'm on the board of the Society of Authors and the board of the Crime Writers Association. And I've got 2 teenagers, and
Ah.
obviously run a house.
Yeah.
So, well, 2 teenagers. One of them's 22 and lives in Helsinki at the moment, but they're still backwards and forwards. And I write full time. So
They're
I
never
have
really gone, are they, to be honest?
no, not really. So yeah, and I'm obviously under contract to write at the moment 2 books a year, so that keeps me busy.
So I myself have a long-term illness. This makes you slow down and appreciate the day. What would you say makes you slow down and smell the roses and really appreciate what you've got?
I think it's really important to find joy in every day, so
Yeah.
that you have a few moments of just, and if you've had a rotten day, that you spend a couple of moments just sitting down and maybe lighting a candle or
Yeah.
having some chill time at your desk, maybe listening to a piece of music, something that gives you joy, because I think that's absolutely vital. Life is very short, and you need to have a couple of moments, even if it's a short time, um, to just chill, basically. Yeah, to try and take a step back, or do something that you really love. So it might be reading a book. It might be picking up and going away from everything and picking up a really great book, and that's your moment of joy. So yeah, I think that's very important.
What's your favorite place to curl up during the day and just read? Do you have like a place in your garden, or do you go to a cafe? Is there a reader's nook? Where do you like to go and just read?
I tend to read just right before I go to sleep, so it's usually in bed. So I'd read for
I'm the
half
same.
an hour. If I'm reading for work, for like say the judging, then so this weekend I've got a lot to get through. So I will get the fire lit in the living room and sit on the sofa and have the pile of books next to me, and keep warm. Basically, is the most important thing.
I think we're all doing that, to be honest, this winter,
Mm.
because it's been a brutal winter.
Yeah, it's grim.
Yeah. Well, you survived the podcast, and we're now on to the word game portion, which is the bit where we all have a lot of fun. And the way it works is I will say a word, and you give me the first book that comes to your mind.
Okay.
So your first word is thunderstorm.
Oh, thunderstorm. Oh, I'm just all I can think is the dark and stormy night, and I can't even remember the name of the book that comes from. But
We'll take that. That's
yeah,
a win. If that's what comes to your mind, that's what comes to your mind. I think of The Moth by Catherine Cookson. Because she always had dark, kind of sort of crazy nights almost
yeah,
in that one. So yeah, it totally gets me every time. What about the sea?
the sea. I think my book, Remember My Name, would be the one that I think of for the sea, because Brioni, who is one of the characters in it, is a sea swimmer, and in that particular book, when I was writing it, I was thinking in terms of the different characters representing different elements as well, and she's water. So she is, so she swims in the sea and she spends a lot of time at the beach, and she's very sort of connected to the water. So yeah, I think that would be
What about ocean? What does ocean make you think of?
Makes me think of Atlantic crossings and Titanics. Of the Titanic, I have a friend called Hazel Gaynor who wrote an amazing book called The Girl Who Came Home, which was her debut novel, and she actually ended up, it's about the Titanic, about a group of 14 people who left a village, an island, and went aboard the Titanic, and one of them came home. And it's an amazing, it's a true story, and Idaho 14 they were called, and yeah, basically it's an incredible story. It was her debut novel. She self-published it to start with because it was getting closer and closer to the Titanic anniversary, and she had this fantastic story, and sometimes some stories just have to be published at a certain time. And it was read by 2 New York agents. It sold phenomenally well, and one of them took her on, and she's an international bestseller now. So
it's incredible. Yeah. What about forests?
Forests. What do I think of? Probably Jane Harper's book. You know, the one where I've forgotten the title of now. The one before last, I think, where the people went off into the forest and they were on a team building exercise.
Yeah, I know the one you're on about.
Yeah,
and it's on the tip of my tongue, which is awful. But there is Protestant exiles as well, so
it'll be in the front of this one though.
Yeah. There's forest in that, so yeah.
I think The Survivors was the last one, The Lost Man, Force of Nature, maybe it was Force of Nature, The Drivers.
It was Force of Nature, yeah, it was Force of Nature, yeah.
So, excuse me, yeah, so that's definitely Jane Harper.
What about stars?
Stars? Oh,
yeah.
The John Green book, what's that called? It's about stars.
Written in the Stars?
Written in the Stars.
Is that the one you're on about?
Stars. Yeah, I'm sure I think of John Green straight away.
He did do one called Written in the Stars. That's why I was saying.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, last one. Moon.
I think of definitely Moonacre. So that's Elizabeth Gouge's Little White Horse, which is one of my absolute favourite books that I read as a child. And definitely set in Moonacre Manor.
Yeah, I think of Roundhouse by Catherine Cookson, because there's this beautiful scene where the girl's sitting in her window and she's so sad and she can just see the moon, and her entire story starts from that night when she's sitting looking out of the window.
Wow.
And her entire story is just
really strong.
Changed from that moment on, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. Just the imagery she had for that sold me on the rest of the book. I didn't care if the rest of the book was awful. I was going to read it because that one scene was just enough for me. I was like, I gotta know. So yeah, but you survived the podcast.
Indeed.
I hope you had fun, because this is supposed to be the one piece of media you get to do that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been brilliant. It's been great.
And we'd love to have you back. When you've got a new book coming out, you'll have to come back and tell us all about it and break it down a bit and share some writing secrets and goosey secrets that got you there. Maybe even share some possible actor names that represent your characters.
I'm really hopeless on that because I never watch films, so I never know who anybody is. People are always
what I do.
Who want to play such and such as such a character, and I have absolutely no idea. I think that's the casting director's job, and they're the ones that know. So,
well, what I do, because I know it has to be an actual face that I can YouTube it and see the person moving and talking. I'll go on to IMDb and I'll just flick through different things till I find that face that fits whoever it is, and then I can YouTube it, and then I can then finally see the whole form of who I've put together. I wish, one of these days I will do a podcast about one of the books that I did where I sat for about 2 months trying to find this one character. Because it was painful. But when I got it in the end, I was like, ha! So yeah, I think we all have one of those moments, really, to be honest. But it has been a pleasure having you on. We would be super excited to have you back. Guys, you're going to want to check out next week because we have an amazing surprise visitor that I wasn't expecting to have on. So you're going to want to come back and see us. And let's keep reading, guys.